All right, guys, what's going on? As promised, more MMA content. Joined with Scott Kent, who is the president of Lion Fight, the premier Muay Thai organization, really, I guess you could say, in the world. For me, Muay Thai brings a lot of impact to the fans. It embodies what fans want to see in fighting. You know, you get the positive elements of kickboxing, but you get elbows incorporated. You know, MMA fans always seem to boo the laborious clinch or the stagnant ground games. Muay Thai really doesn't have any of that. Scott, why would you say that the Muay Thai hasn't grown more in popularity?
Well, I don't know that there's been a promotion that's really been able to financially mobilize itself, get on national TV prior to Lion Fight. There's been promoters that have done this for 20 years, but they're staying at a local and a regional level. They haven't been able to develop the talent. They're not bringing in the international superstars that we brought in. And I think what is really surprising to me is that, we're broadcast to 46 million people in North America, but people all over the world are aware of Lion Fight because of YouTube, because of social media, the fact that even from the beginning we brought in, the Yodson Clydes, the Fabio Pincas. So we've got a presence everywhere we go.
Right, and you're doing this with the highest level fighters from all over the globe. You've even had, UFC President Dana White work with you guys a little bit. Can you explain how much and really how well you've globalized your guys' brand in really just a short period of time? You're talking about 5 years here.
Yeah, I know when I was talking to Dana about that, he said that we were light years ahead of where they were. It took them, I don't know, 13 years or something like that to get to the point and $30-some million, whatever it was, before they, were profitable. But they had to create a sport. They had to create a whole social dynamic to what they're doing. We've been able to take a sport that's, very popular in Europe and it's very popular in Asia. But like you alluded to earlier, it's never really been properly promoted and I don't think really showcased to the level that we've been able to do that. And that's why we've had the folks at Muay Thai Grand Prix in London, Warriors Way in Australia and New Zealand, calling us, wanting to team up with us because our brand is out there and they're aware of it. And, it's like anything else. You haven't really made it until you've made it in America. So I think that's something that bodes well for us.
We had kind of talked privately about Bellator joining the ranks of kickboxing. How do you see that progressing for them? I mean, obviously you just talked about how much you've grown. Did you see that as a threat to you, or do you kind of want fans to say, hey, wait a second, Lion Fight's been here for a long time, we're more established, and certainly, in my opinion, would have a higher caliber fighter. Do you feel that fans would gravitate more towards Muay Thai if they just knew it was there and knew the elements that it brought to them?
Yeah, people asked me that same question before Glory came along, and Glory didn't affect us in any way. I think the fact that once a consumer is able to take a look at this and say, wow, these elbows are game changers. You just look at our last fight we had in Foxwood last week. 2 fights were determined by elbows. Can you imagine MMA without elbows? And I think that's really our focus now, is to educate people on the difference between Muay Thai and kickboxing, that fighters can fight in the clinch and all the damage that can be done. And the elbows, which are, such a difference maker, not only in Muay Thai, but in MMA. So I don't feel, I have a lot of respect for Scott Coker. I really like him. He did really well with the K1. I think Bellator is going to do well. But I certainly don't think that Bellator kickboxing is something that's really going to affect us in a negative way.
Do you think, you mentioned, a short-lived lifespan with the company up until now, but Muay Thai, obviously, centuries that it's been around. The way Muay Thai fighters are groomed, there's more respect, there's more honor, there's more integrity. You don't have the characters, if you will, to go back to Bellator and, you maybe mentioned some of the annex we see from certain fighters. That really doesn't happen in Muay Thai. You don't have that verbal commitment with fighters, doing interviews, speaking out against each other. Do you feel like that's impacted what you guys do at all, because you don't have that person who's being pompous or who's carrying on and drawing attention to themselves just because of the way they've been groomed to fight?
You're right. There's such a cultural tradition, and anybody that really trains Muay Thai seriously, and especially if they've gone to Thailand and did any training, that's something that's ingrained in these fighters. Yeah, we don't have, we haven't done the thing for TV ratings where we're bringing in guys that shouldn't even be in the ring and, willing to withstand the negative criticism or, the staged, things, promotional things to get people to buy tickets. We have very respectful fighters, and I think there's a certain segment out there that really appreciates that, whether you're a martial artist or whether that you just appreciate the respect that goes along with a sport like Muay Thai. You'll see our guys after, a bloody war. They'll get on their knees and show respect to each other in the corner. And I don't mean to be disrespectful to any other combat sport out there, but I think that's something that a traditional martial art will offer a fan. And I think it's a refreshing alternative.
Absolutely. And not just to that, but also, you have a lot of the headdresses, the arm dressing. There's a lot of respect put into what they've earned as a fighter, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what you said as far as respecting each other. One other thing that MMA really has had an issue with is going to come down to the decisions. And what you guys have actually done is pretty unique, where you have an independent review process now that can go in and help overturn decisions with the IKF. And this is independent third-party evaluations, and you've already had this overturn a decision. Can you talk about that process a little bit and why you feel other sports, I don't want to bring up UFC directly, but we just had a big lapse in judgment with people when they think about who won the fight between Bisping and Silva. You had a very similar situation in Lion Fight, and we're fortunate enough to be able to rely on the IKF in resolving that.
Well, and you look at, the National Football League. They have instant replay. They have things, and the whole intention is to try and do the right thing. There's nothing more frustrating than sit there and watching a fight. And, I grew up watching wide world of sports and boxing, and you'd see decisions sometimes, and you'd just be scratching your head, and nothing was ever done about it. Even when there was an appeal that was filed, nothing was ever done. And I don't want to, start, a landslide here of disputed decisions, but I think there's an obligation to a sanctioning organization to say, you know what, I've got this individual or this unique review process. The IKF sent this out, I think, to 22 independent judges around the world without the sound. Watch the fight, look at the scoring criteria, and let's take a look at it. And, if it came back and it was a 50-50 split, I think everybody's okay. But I think it was 90% or better that had Gaston winning the fight. And as a promoter, I don't want to get involved with the judging. I don't want to pick judges. I want an organization that's going to take that responsibility seriously. And if there is a disputed decision and if they feel it's warranted, that they have that process out there as a safety net, again, to do the right thing. I think that's in everybody's best interest.
Yeah, a lot of it is judgment calls. I mean, not to just go to UFC, but you can go right back to Bellator. You've got a clear-cut situation where, Ken did get caught in the groin with a shot from Gracie. It's obviously not caught in the heat of the moment. But with the IKF, if that was in place for them, now you've got that video, like you said, going to 22 different people in different countries. They're a little bit bipartisan because they don't have exactly the reputation to uphold as one company. They don't have any, ties to one fighter. Now you're just basically saying to people independently, hey, did this guy get hit in the groin with a knee? If that's the case, then you're looking to set rematches up with these fights. You're looking to have decisions changed, maybe, the draw of an outcome, things that can affect a fighter's career, especially, more so with Ken Shamrock, affecting his legacy. Do you feel like this is something that maybe you guys can start with, that other series are going to pick up and say, hey, wait a second, this is the right thing? When you got the decision overturned, did anyone come to you and say, listen, this is something you've done, but we need to look at as well?
It's amazing the response, and especially through social media, everybody was talking about that. And, there are arguments both ways that, in a perfect world, if, from a promotional standpoint, people ask me if I'm happy with it, probably my preference would have been to say, wow, let's just make it a no contest. Let's do an automatic rematch. I thought that made sense. But, again, this is not my decision. I'm going to stand by the sanctioning body that we brought in to do it. And, you know, at some point maybe we'll get a rematch, and that's really the only way that you know, I think the public is going to be wholly satisfied with it, because there's always going to be people. I mean, you've seen hundreds of fights, thousands of fights. There's, even when a fighter, you know, clearly gets beat, you know, there's always his friends and family or people on social media that felt he got the short end of the stick. So I think this is, you don't want to start a snowball effect, but I think in a case like that where it is warranted, that you've got a group that's going to take a look at this and take the time and try and do the right thing. I think it's really good for combat sports.
So what briefly then would that entail? Is this a situation where a fighter can say, you know what, I disagree, this was an early stoppage in my opinion? Are those things that are going to be reviewed, or are these just things where they're going to be decisions, maybe not so much the ticky-tack things that have kind of plagued martial arts and MMA as a whole?
Yeah, I think this has to be the exception and not the rule. Something that was glaring. I know at the event itself, a lot of people were stunned. People I have a lot of respect for that were surprised at the judging and allegations that were made. And, you know, that's the last thing you want to have as a sport, is to think that there's, you know, maybe a bias or impropriety going on. And you know, having these folks independently take a look at it, people that are professional and do this for a living, and say, well, no, that's the wrong call. And having a sanctioning body that's willing to take the heat to do that, you know, it's you know, you're not going to please everybody. I think fundamentally, if you're motivated by trying to do the right thing, I think in the end, you're going to come out the right way in the public's perception.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and certainly it takes a humbled organization to look to the outside and say, okay, we're going to put this in your hands, not our own. And when you do that, you know, you kind of get a lot of the things we've just talked about with criteria of being impartial, unbiased, and also have that fall back and reflect on your organization in a positive way. In my opinion, I'm sure there's some people that, like you said, would be against reviews of anything for that matter. But, you know, with all that being said here, certainly Lion Fight has established itself as a force to be dealt with. With every person that we bring on, we always ask, if it's going to take us a year for you and me to talk again, where do you see Lion Fight a year from now?
Well, we've got 10 fights scheduled this year on Access TV. I think you're going to see us grow into some areas in the United States that have not been a hotbed for Muay Thai in the past, but we're getting a lot of fighters. We're getting a lot of interest from the Midwest. We're looking at doing some shows collectively with our partners in England and Australia. I've had discussions with China and South America and Mexico. So I think over the next 12 months, you're going to see not only consistent quality, world-class Muay Thai fights, you're going to see us expanding in some areas that people maybe wouldn't have thought we would be going to. But we think it's important for our brand. We think it's important for our fighters to give them an opportunity and develop their own fan bases. And the reality is that once people see this sport, and I know you and I have mentioned this briefly, I think, you know, you give the consumer, you give the fan an option. You know, do you like this better than MMA? You know, maybe you don't like the jiu-jitsu, you don't like the wrestling, and you like stand-up fighting, and you like the elbows. And it's not for everybody, but we think there's a great segment of the population that once they see this, they're going to fall in love with it, just like all of our fans to date have.
Well, Scott, you know, it's one thing to do an interview with a fighter. It's one thing to do an interview with a trainer, but it's totally a different thing to do with a president of an organization. So I certainly, you know, respect your time. I appreciate you coming in to talk about it. And certainly I know this isn't going to be the last time that we talk. Is there anyone, you know, you don't do a whole lot of interviews. Is there anyone that you specifically want to thank that's helped you grow the organization? You know, if you want to, I'd be glad to give you the time to do that now.
You know, we have some initial investors that we don't really ever talk about. You know, Don and Madeline Andrus, Ken and Gina Gardner, Whitney Deere. We've got, you know, some other people who've been behind the scenes that have been there from the beginning. And really, we couldn't have done it. People ask me all the time, you know, if you're going to start a new business as a promoter, what do you do? And, you know, probably the honest answer is you better have a chunk of money or have some people with some money, because it's a tough grind the first few years, and you're going to lose money. So I think they are people you need to tip your hat to, the fighters and the fans that have been with us from the beginning. And, I'm just blessed to have a great team. Christine Toledo and Carrie Hartney and the group, we're really small. We run really lean, but I think it's really paying off for us now.